Question 1 stated right at the top here. It said you will be assessed on the quality of your organisation, communication and accuracy in writing in this question. Now it's clear to me that you've not seen a lot of this going up through school so far, so we're going to do a lesson on this, okay? Now if it says this, it means that you've got to describe your steps as you go, and they tell you that it's worth 2 marks here. OCW means organisation, communication and writing, 2 marks, okay? But you still get 3 for the maths, and the maths is still really important. The best thing you can do is, as you're doing your working, is that you just state, you put an arrow and point at what you've just done and say why you've done it. So reading the question, it says, Owen works in a school kitchen. He used the recipe information for pancakes shown above. He measures out the plain flour, milk, butter, and placed them in with the eggs in a large bowl. He measures out 150 fluid ounces. So if you're using highlights, which a lot of you were, 150 fluid ounces, that's important, of water to to his other pancake ingredients in the bowl. How many pancakes is he making? Okay, so the first thing that I noticed here was that we were told 25 millilitres is equal to 1 fluid ounce, which I'm going to abbreviate to FLOZ, fluid ounces. Now, he has 150 fluid ounces. So what have I done to 1 to change it to 150? Well, the answer is I've times that by 150. So what I need to do now is I need to do 25 millilitres times by 150. Now I don't know the answer to that. I'm expected to have to do some mental maths to work it out. There's lots and lots of different ways you could do this. You could times by 100, times by 200, and then find what's in the middle. So some nice grids as well going on, maybe something like this. So if I split in fact actually I don't need to do it, I'm making it harder than it needs to be here. Let me undo that last bit there. There we go. Let me just split it into that and partition it to 20 and 5 and 150. So what is 20 times by 100? So that's 2,000. What is 20 times 50? Well, 2 times 5 is 10, then 2 zeros to be added, so that's 1,000. And then 100 times 5 would be 500. And 50 times 5 would be 250. And then adding up all of these would be 2,000 add 1,000, so 3,000. Add the 500, add the 250, gives me an answer of 3,750. So 3,750 millilitres of water has gone in the bowl. So I'm told by here now, if I just come back up, that to make 4 pancakes, you need 37.5 millilitres of water. So I now need to try and find a link between the 37.5 millilitres for 4 pancakes, if I can write pancakes, to the 300 or 3,750. Okay, so I've got to try and find out a link of what's been gone there. So I'm looking at those numbers, I can see, look, they're pretty similar, aren't they? If I times it by 10, it would become 375, still not big enough, so then times it by 10 again would be 3,750, so I've times that by 100. Now that recipe made enough for 4 pancakes, so 4 pancakes times by 100 would give me a total pancakes equals 4 times by 100, which equals 400 pancakes. Okay, now if I go back up to the top and I highlight what I said right at the beginning, I clearly haven't got those marks. Okay, so how am I going to get them? What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little arrow there, I'm going to point to it and say finding, what was I doing by here? I did 25 times by 150. I was finding the amount of water used in millilitres. And the reason why I did that, I'm going to say, if I can come down a little bit more, and say because, so explaining why I did it, because the recipe above was given in millilitres. Okay, so that's why I did that bit there. And then this bit here, now I need to explain why I'm doing 4 times by 100. I'm going to say 4 times by 100, and I'm going to point to that and say times by 100 as 37.5 times by 100 is equal to 3,750. Now, why was that? That was enough for 4 pancakes. Enough for 4 pancakes. And why the 3,750? Because that's how much water was used. So in terms of your writing your organisation, you could maybe have a bit of a go at me and say, oh, your organisation is not the best there, and I'd take that on the chin. I think it would be enough to get my full marks, because I've made sure my answer's really nice and clear. I've explained all my steps. Maybe this was a little bit chaotic, just writing that by there. Maybe that's a fair point, but I did want you to be aware that that's what is needed in this sort of question. There were a number of you that got 5 marks, so I just want you to have a look and see what was needed in some of these. So by all means pause the video and have a good look at these and read them through and see what was needed. So there's the first one, there's the next one, and the next one. So this one really short in terms of writing, but it can't argue with anything. It's all described really, really, really well. And then finally this one here. Okay, so well done if that was your work that was used then. Okay, question 2. Now there's some nice marks in this. This was very, very, very nice marks. You look for the smaller x out of the 2. So that would be the 3x. So that 3x is going to go over to that side, and that means anything without x on this side will come over to here. So this is going to give me 8x minus 3x equals 29 plus 11. That becomes 5x, this becomes 40. A number of you said 30, be careful. Take the 5 over, it becomes divided by 5. Finally, x equals 8. Next one, factorise means put into brackets. That's what the word factorise means. So I'm looking for a number that goes into both 7 and 49, and that is 7. And then you divide each of these terms by 7. So 7x divided by 7 becomes x, and 49 divided by 7 becomes 7. It's a plus sign there, which means it's a plus sign there. Again, factorise, so that means put into brackets, but this time there's no numbers that goes into both, but you might guess what it is now because I just accidentally said. You can see there's a letter that goes into both, which is x. You always take the smallest power of x, so this one here, x to the power of 1 or just x, and you're going to divide each of these by x. So x squared divided by x is just x, and then minus, because it's a minus, 10x divided by x is just 10. And when you expand that bracket, it should give you back what you had here. And then finally here, expand 2x. Now remember to times both things by 2, that becomes 2x squared plus 12x. A number of you missed that x there, be careful. Now, this question here fooled loads of you, and the advice I gave was, now this is going to mess up everything, so I'm going to try and manoeuvre it and then see if it works a second. In fact, actually, give me a second. I'm just going to get another version of this and put it underneath it. Give me a second. Okay, so hopefully you can see that this time. Well, you can see it last time, but hopefully you can see it again. Now, the best way to do this was to actually rotate your paper around like that, because we're used to seeing these parallel lines coming across us like that, not diagonally, and that's where loads of you mess your marks up. And I've warned you about questions like that in the past, so be careful. So, Z here tells me this angle is 52. This 125 here, I know through F angles there that this must also be 125. That means this is 125, this is 125, and to work out B, we just want to do angles on a straight line. So that's 55 there, 55 there, and 55 there. Now I could go and work out these as all 52s here, and then work out that these are all 128s here as well, but it's pretty pointless as I wasn't asked any of those angles there, but I could have done that. But this question was a million times easier if you rotated the paper around. If I now come back up to here, I can fill in my numbers. The A was 125, not 128. B was 55, and C was 52. Okay then, now this was making sure you understood some key terminology and lots of marks dropped across the class on this. That minus thing there means 1 over. The 2 cubed remains exactly the same. 2 cubed means 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8, and then it's 1 over 8. So it is this one here. Anything to the power of 0 is always 1, by definition. And then this one here is where the most marks are dropped. To the power of 4 means times by itself 4 times. So 2a cubed times 2a cubed times 2a cubed. Finally, times 2a cubed. So 2 times 2 is 4, times by 2 is 8, times by 2 is 16. So that knocks out that one, and that one. And then you add together these powers. So 3, 6, 9, 12. It had to be this one here, not that one. Okay, now the shortcut of doing that is saying that you just do the number to the power of 4, so 2 to the power of 4 is 16, and then you times the indices together. Number 5, I was only looking for one particular word here. It says Lucy has been given pie charts showing that the number of companies sold to 2 different companies, so women, men, and men, women here. And just on the face of it, you would assume that more men bought computers from LF computers. So it says more men buy RG computers than LF. And I just assumed it was that one, but I'm not given any numbers of people who have bought stuff here. So it says explain how this could be true, as long as you mention something about the numbers of people buying them. So we are not told the number of people that buy computers. That would have got you the mark, okay? That's all you need to write. Number 6. Very, very careful here. Lots of you made really silly little mistake here. Nearest 100 miles. So I'm expecting to see that 100 halved. That becomes 50. That means I'm going to take it off to find the least distance. So that is 2,950, not 2,500. Careful. This one is going to be 3,050. And then this one here is the nearest hour. Now again, be careful. Nearest hour means nearest 1 hour. Divided by 2 is 0.5 of an hour. Half an hour, but we're going to write that as 79.5 hours. We're not going to write it as 79.30. Unless you wrote 79 hours and 30 minutes, I was taking the mark off there. Or, well, yeah, strictly speaking, I was taking the mark off there. 80.5 hours for the greatest. And then it says, write down the calculation for Klaus would need to enter into his calculator to work out the greatest value for average speed of his car during these journeys. Now, you needed to remember your speed, distance, time triangle. So I remember it as speed is equal to distance divided by time, and that helps me remember that. So to work out speed, I need to do distance divided by time. So speed would equal, now for his greatest value of average speed, must have been when he did the most amount of miles, so 3,050, in the shortest amount of time. So as long as you wrote that down, you got the mark. Next one. Now this was quite a nasty question. Lots of you missing, 4 marks here. Hardly anyone got 4 marks. It says a shopkeeper pays £120 for an MP3 player. He wishes to put a marked price on the MP3 player so that in a forthcoming sale he gives 25% on the marked discount on the marked price, and he will still make a profit of 20%. So 120 quid. He wants to make 20% profit. So 10% profit would be equal to 12 quid. So 20% must be equal to 24 quid. So he wants to make this 24 quid. So he needs to sell for 120 quid plus the 24 quid. Now that comes to 144 quid. So that's what he's going to sell it for. Now he's going to put a discount of 25% on it. So we're doing something called reverse percentages here, where the original amount take away 25% must be equal to this 144 quid. So that's going to give us 75% is equal to 144 quid. and then I need to work out what the 100% was. So what I'm going to do now, ordinarily without a calculator, I'd just divide both sides by 75, and if you showed me that bit there, I was giving you a mark because I felt it was a fair point. That's what we'd normally do, but in this case, because I haven't got a calculator, I'm going to try and do something a bit smarter. I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So if I divide both sides by 3, I'm going to get 25% here. I'm going to work out how many 3's go into 144. So 3's into 1 don't go, into 14 is 4, remainder 2, and then 3's into 24 is 8. So I know that 25% is equal to 48. Now you could times both sides by 4, that's one way of doing it. In fact, actually that's what I will do, because times by 4 you were going to double it to get 96, and then we double that to get 192. But again, if you wanted to, you could split the 90 up into something like 90 and 6 and double each of those. So 192 there for 100%. You could have done 75% being 144, add the 48. That's another way of doing it if you'd liked. Question 8. So it says, it gives us a load of data about motorway costs, and it says a road in 2009 that was built went 10% over the published cost. So this was the published cost. The road is 28 miles long, with 3/4 of its length being a single carriageway. So 3/4 of 28 equals, well, 1/4 would be 7, so 3/4 would be 21 miles. If you wrote that down, I probably gave you a mark, but you need to do a little bit more to get an extra mark here. Now, it says calculate how much that costs. So it's 21 times by 8 million. Now the best way of doing this, I'm going to do 21 times by 8 here. That's going to be 8 and 16, so equals 168 million. So I'm just going to say m of the million. Then I know it went 10% over. So 10% of 168 million would be 16.8 million. And then 168 add the 16.8 is going to give me 8, 14 and 8 and 1, so it's equal to 148.8 million pounds. Now that answer there is absolutely fine. You don't need to go and put that into figures, but lots of you trying to put it into figures. I just left it in terms of million, and it made it a lot easier. For the second bit of the question, it said calculate an estimate for the cost of the remaining dual carriageway. So the dual carriageway must have been the 7 miles, and we're timesing that by 13 million there. So the 13 million there times by 7. So I'm just going to say 7 times by 13 mil. Now that would be 7 times 12 would be 84. So 7 times by 13 would be 91 million. So I'd look at that and I'd assume it's that, but that's wrong, because it went 10% over its published cost. So then if I find 10% of that, that's going to be 9.1 mil. And then if we add that onto that, it's going to be 100.1 mil. So it's going to be the next one up. So obviously that's less. 10 million is way too short. And that's way too short. So it must be that by process of elimination. The next question we were allowed to use our calculator on. And it said we had a right angle triangle. Now, loads of you made this way too hard. If you see a right angle triangle, you are using Pythag or SOHCAHTOA. That's it. Don't go and use sine cosine rule. You'll make it too hard on yourself. It can be done, but you'll make it way too hard on yourself. Okay. Now I've got two sides here. I'm asked to find the length of PR, so that's a third side. So for this one, I'm going to use Pythagoras. Now the formula for this is a squared equals b squared plus c squared. I like to say h squared because it's like the hypotenuse, and I'm given the hypotenuse, so I'm going to change that to h squared minus b squared equals a squared. Then I'm going to chuck the numbers in, so that's going to be 18.4 squared minus 12.5 squared equals a squared. And then I'm going to take the squared over as a square root, and I'm going to chuck that into my calculator in one go. And it is going to give me an answer, and it has to be smaller than 18.4. If it's not smaller than 18.4, it doesn't work, does it? And that should give you an answer of, to one decimal place, 13.5 centimetres. So it's important you say it's 13.5. And they said that was PR, so I could even say by here, PR equals 13.5 centimetres and make my answer stand out. Okay, now the next bit, too many of you thought this was just using the cosine rule. You made it again way too hard. It's a right angle triangle. You are using SOHCAHTOA. Okay, so I think this is the way that Ben wrote it, that I said I quite liked. SOHCAHTOA. Okay, so let's look at the right angle triangle. There's the right angle. Opposite the right angle is always the hypotenuse. Okay, but the rest of the question I need to look at before I can answer it. It says angle PRQ. So P to R to Q. That's this angle up at the top here. So we're going to call that theta. That means this is opposite and this is adjacent. So I'm going to underline the hypotenuse because I know it, and I'm going to underline the opposite because I know it, although we have just gone and worked out the adjacent, so we could use that instead if we want. Okay, so because I have underlined opposite and hypotenuse, they're the ones I'm crossing off. So that tells me that sine theta is equal to the opposite side, so that's 12.5, divided by the hypotenuse, so that's 18.4. I would now take sine across, and it would become sine minus 1 of 12.5 over 18.4. That goes into my calculator, and it gives me an answer of 42.8 degrees to 1 decimal place. Okay then, final question. You did very, very, very well on this. This is a hard question. I was very, very pleased to see how well people did. It says, find out the area of triangle A to C to D. Okay, so A to C to D, A to C to D. It just wants to know the area of this. Now, to work out the area of this triangle, we want to use the formula a half AB sine C. Now, if you want to, you can rearrange that with the letters, but I said not to bother. I said where A and B go and meet angle C, so A and B, we need to know these two sides here. Now, I know that side and I know that angle, but I need to go and work out that side, so that's where we focus on the top triangle here. Now, in this top triangle, I've got two sides and one angle already, and I want to know this side here. Okay, now because I want to know that side there, at the end of this question, the top, I will want to know I will know three sides and one angle. If I'm told that, that is telling me to use the cosine rule. Now the cosine rule states on the second page of your test, a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos a. Now the problem we have here is cos a, we haven't got cos a, we've got cos b. So I'm going to change that to a b by there. But if you look at this formula, if there's a capital A there, there's a little a at the front. So I'll swap that with a b. And wherever I see a b now, I change it to an a. So a squared plus c squared minus 2ac cos b. I'm now going to substitute all that information in. So b squared is equal to, so this would be little a because it is opposite angle A. This is going to be opposite c, so this is little c, and this is little b. Okay, so little a squared is 7.2 squared plus 8.8 squared. The best way to write this into your calculator is just through brackets. Minus 2 brackets 7.2 brackets 8.8 cos brackets 84. That is going to go into my calculator, and I'm going to get, I get quite a big answer there. It's about 115 odd. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to square root that answer, that 115 blah blah blah, and then I'm going to find out what b is. So that should come to 10.77 blah blah blah. Okay, now ideally we are not going to round that number unless you're not feeling confident enough to. Okay, but ideally we'll try and leave that in our calculator, and we'll use the ands button so that we can get a really clear answer, a really accurate answer the next bit. So now the area would be equal to a half AB sine C. And as I've already said, that means just these two sides that meet at the angle. We know this side now, so these two sides meet at this angle here, and then I just want to sub that information in. So that will be a half brackets 18.6 and brackets. Now you'll put into your calculator ands, but that ands is really is really this 10.77 answer. Now, if you don't like the idea of using the answer button, just put in ideally put in a couple of DPs, so 10.77 would be fine, and then sine, and then 47. And that should give you an answer of 73.3 centimetres squared to 1 decimal place.